Hey guys, it's Generalkidd here. How's everyone doing today? So, for today's video, we're going to be tackling one of the biggest, long-running myths of Halo 2. Now, this myth isn't like one of the old legends of Halo 2 like the Tri-Gates or Golden Warthog. It's actually one that's been quite mainstream for a while, and accepted as fact. The myth we'll be tackling is that people have thought for a long time that Halo 2's battle rifle, as well as other weapons in that game, is a hitscan weapon. Now, in a previous video, a while back, where I did a comparison about which Halo game had the best battle rifle, I did briefly cover this subject, where I mentioned Halo 2 and Halo 3 both used a method of delayed hitscan. As it turns out, after doing some more digging, I originally thought both games had hitscan weapons, because, in the game files, both versions of the BR had an option checked that says projectile travels instantaneously, which I and some others at the time assumed it meant the projectile is hitscan. But after consulting some more experts on the subject and doing some more digging and tests, it turns out that assumption was wrong, and that the travels instantaneous option actually applies to something along the lines of visual effects for the weapon. But it is definitely not anything to do with it being hit scan. It doesn't change any of the information or conclusions in that video either, but I did want to address that in this video and tell you all definitively once and for all what kind of weapon the BR is in Halo 2 versus Halo 3. And other Halo games actually, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So before we get into the nitty gritty stuff, I want to first give you all a basic summary of what hitscan is and what it means, since not everyone might be fully aware of what it is. So hitscan, when it comes to weapon projectiles in video games, is where the game engine will fire an invisible ray from the weapon in a straight line, and if that light ray hits anything in its path, it will count as a hit for the projectile, quote unquote. The ray more or less travels at the speed of light and will essentially hit its target instantly. Therefore, with a hitscan weapon, you don't need to lead your shots, and the range of the shots will essentially be, infinite. On top of that, the shots won't be affected by things like gravity or wind, and it's essentially, it's point and click, point and shoot essentially. It's infinite range and all that, like instant hit. So, for the longest time, a lot of people have believed that Halo 2's BR, as well as other weapons in that game, like the sniper rifle, is a hitscan weapon. This is also what led to the heavy criticism behind Halo 3's battle rifle. You see, it is well known that in Halo 3, you have to lead your shots with the battle rifle, especially at longer ranges. So, clearly, the Halo 3 BR is an actual projectile-based weapon and not a hitscan weapon, because with a hitscan, you don't need to lead your shots. So that led to some people thinking that Halo 3's BR, being a projectile-based weapon, is the main disadvantage compared to Halo 2's quote-unquote hitscan BR, which had superior performance. The truth is, though, that the Halo 2 battle rifle is not a hitscan weapon. As a matter of fact, no weapon in Halo 2 or any of the classic Halo games have hitscan weapons. I can't speak for Halo 5 because of the lack of mod tools available to get that info, but all the previous Halo games do not have hitscan weapons, and I would guess that Halo 5 probably doesn't either. But everything is all projectile based, contrary to the myth in Halo 2. So, how do we know that the Halo 2 BR is actually a projectile weapon, despite the travels instantaneously option being checked? Well, first off, it's checked for both Halo 2 and the Halo 3 BR, yet we definitely know Halo 3's projectiles do not hit their targets instantly. At the time of that weapon comparison video, I kind of made the reverse assumption that both weapons were hitscan, but their projectile velocities created a sort of delayed hitscan, which, when really it's the other way around, where both are projectile based, but Halo 2's BR just actually has a really high velocity to the point where it can feel like a hitscan weapon. Plus, unchecking the travels instantaneously option really doesn't do anything noticeable. So the way to tell definitively is to play around with the projectile properties. Let's take a look at the stats of the Halo 2 BR real quick again. You can see here that Halo 2's BR has a max range of 40 world units and a velocity of 400 world units per second. On the other hand, Halo 3's BR has a max range of 60 world units and a velocity of 160 world units per second. Quite a difference in velocities here. Halo 2 definitely has the faster projectile compared to Halo 3. Now, let's change the velocity of Halo 2's BR down to 1 world unit per second and see what happens. as you can see, at such a low velocity, we actually end up with a kind of matrix-like effect. But the lower velocity does indeed make a noticeable difference. Basically, the bullets just travel in super slow motion, and you can even dodge bullets, like in the Matrix. You can also genuinely tell that the bullets really are traveling a lot slower, because if you were to run faster than the bullets, which you can at this slow velocity, you can actually push an object out of the way in the bullet's path, and when the bullet finally gets to that point, it won't actually hit the object. So it's not like the bullet impact is delayed or anything. The bullets are literally traveling slower. Now let's try another little experiment here and add a gravity of 1 to the projectiles, while also increasing their velocities to 10 at the same time. So as you can see here, the projectile is, it's still affected by the lower velocity property, but it's also affected by gravity now as well. You can see the bullet dropping down when I shoot it. And then, basically in this case, not only, yeah, you have to lead your shots with a super low velocity, but now the bullet drops, so I have to compensate for that by aiming a little higher in order to hit the target. So you can tell that it's being affected by both properties at the same time, both physics properties, that is. Alright, so one last test or experiment that we can do is to test out the max range property of the BR, because that's probably one of the last important physics property that we can, that'll be a good example for this video. So you can see here that when the BR projectiles hits its max range, the projectiles just vanish, thus respecting its max range property. It's actually pretty easy to encounter in regular gameplay, but as you can see, the projectiles, when they hit their max range, they just stop and disappear. They don't keep going on forever. And that's pretty much true of every weapon in Halo 2. Like even the sniper rifle, it also has a max range to the projectiles, which it's a little harder to set up on a map like Coagulation, but it will hit its limit. And as you can see here, just like the BR bullets, it will stop and just vanish. So projectiles in Halo 2, such as the BR's projectile, does respect their physics properties. So what does this mean exactly? Well, the very nature of Hitscan means the projectile, quote unquote, is more or less just a beam of light in a straight line. Therefore, a Hitscan, quote unquote, projectile doesn't have any projectile physics applied to it, like being affected by gravity. As I mentioned earlier, Hitscan projectiles travel instantly and are also infinite range, until they hit some kind of surface. So the very fact that Halo 2's BR projectiles obey these physics properties that we just messed around with earlier proves it's an actual projectile weapon and not a Hitscan weapon. The very nature of Hitscan makes all these projectile properties impossible or very difficult to reproduce with Hitscan, to the point where it's actually just more practical to have the game spawn actual projectiles. And on that note, another piece of evidence to support this is that you can, and have always been able to, swap projectiles in Halo games with mod tools. I don't know for a fact whether you can projectile swap in Hitscan games, but at the very least, in the case of Halo, the weapons are designed to spawn an actual projectile or object when you press the trigger, rather than a ray of light. It's always been this way since Halo 1, really. Nothing has ever been Hitscan in Halo before. Not even the Spartan laser in Halo 3, for example, is Hitscan, even though it's a laser beam. Like the Halo 2 BR, you can also mess with the physics of the Spartan laser's projectiles, even though, it is a laser beam, but technically it is a projectile. So you can mess with that and projectile swap just fine as well. But of course, to sum this all up again, going back to the whole Hitscan thing, all of this, with maybe the exception of the projectile swapping, because I'm not 100% positive about that. I haven't really modded too many other games before. But, with all that in mind, that would all be impossible with a Hitscan weapon. So that's how you know the Halo 2 battle rifle is a projectile weapon. So there you guys have it. Hopefully this settles the debate and, clears the myth once and for all that Halo 2's BR is not superior to Halo 3's because it's Hitscan versus projectile, but rather, it's also a projectile weapon in exactly the same way that Halo 3's is. Both of them have the exact same, projectile physics, with the only difference being their max range and velocities, and I think a few other things here and there. But the main reason that Halo 2's battle rifle is superior to Halo 3's is because it has a significantly higher projectile velocity, which reduces the need to lead your shots and also gives it the illusion of being a hitscan weapon. And, you know, because Halo 3's BR projectile velocity is significantly slower, that just makes it being a projectile-based weapon, a lot more apparent compared to Halo 2. You know, at close to medium ranges, the high velocity of the Halo 2 BR is truly difficult to tell apart from a hitscan weapon. So that's probably where a lot of the misconception originally came from. But the whole travels instantaneously option that you know, I showed in that previous comparison video, it's mainly just for some kind of like visual effect syncing or something like that, and has nothing to do with making it a projectile hit scan or not. So sorry about the confusion in my BR comparison video, but I just, you know, wanted to clear that up in this video as well, and, you know, tackle that myth once and for all. But anyways, in conclusion, at least with all the Halo games on the Master Chief Collection now, you know, Halo 1 to 4 and including Reach, Halo has never had a hitscan weapon before, and every weapon was always projectile based in some way, shape, or form. Even the energy weapons, you know, beam weapons and stuff like that shoot out like lasers, they are actually all just projectile based weapons. Like the Spartan laser, going back to that example, or Sentinel beams, they're not shooting out, like, they're not even shooting out a constant beam actually. They are like super rapid firing, like these small beam projectiles. But, you know, the rapid fire is so fast that it looks like it's a straight, you know, one single beam. But it is still firing projectiles. You know, Sentinel beams, Spartan lasers, beam rifle, they're all projectile-based weapons, just like the battle rifle is, and just like in Halo 3 as well. And Halo 1, and Halo 4, and Halo Reach, and so on. And most likely Halo 5 as well. Now, some weapons, like I said earlier, probably did feel like they were hit scan because they had really high velocities. Like, if you remember from my weapon comparison series, a lot of Reach and Halo 4 weapons had crazy high velocities, like in the thousands, which would easily be almost indistinguishable from a hit scan weapon, especially at closer ranges. But the fact remains that they are all still projectile-based weapons and not hit scan, especially in Halo 2, which is what we're discussing in this video. But hopefully that settles the myth and has clarified the truth. So if you guys have any more questions about that, or, you know, if you want to add anything else to all this evidence, then, you know, feel free to. But this is definitely, you know, open for discussion. But it is definitely not a hit scan weapon. So hopefully that whole myth can be set aside now, because even, you know, the Halopedia and Halo Wiki, they all say that the BR is a hit scan weapon. So it's been a lot of inaccurate information for a long time now, hence the whole myth. Hopefully that's all settled now and shouldn't be any more confusion from this point on. But anyways, aside from all that, thank you for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this video and found it to be interesting and informative, as always, make sure to leave a like. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Like I said, if you want to discuss this or if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead. And of course, if there's anything else you want me to tackle or look into, then as always, just let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to look into it when I get a chance. But other than that, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all next time. Bye, guys.